that just brings everyone in line. And when you collaborate effectively, you can literally move mountains. Why are we keeping behaviour profiling away from young adults? These are exactly the skills they need that are going to help them to stay fulfilled, mentally healthy, and create those relationships that are successful. We have a chance to be able to reduce the number of horrendous cases of suicide, of self-harm, of depression, of stress. This can make a massive difference.
You are watching the School's Motivational Speaker podcast, and if you're listening on Spotify or any other medium or platform, you are listening to the School's Motivational Speaker podcast. I am joined by somebody that I've known for many, many years. She is an absolutely amazing professional speaker, an entrepreneur, and in fact, how we met was a story in itself. I don't know if we're going to go into that or not, but we first met at BBC radio station in Birmingham, and her story blew me away. But today we're going to focus on young people and young people's relationships. Before we do that, Michelle, share with our listeners, our viewers, a bit about your background so they understand contextually what we're talking about and why we're talking about it.
Thank you, Haroon, and it's fabulous to be here. And yes, I feel very connected to you, and it does stem back to that very, very first meeting. And we were waiting in the green room, weren't we, at BBC Radio? We were both doing interviews. So my interview was all about my experience in the Boxing Day Tsunami. So I was a very successful CEO with my own company that was winning every single award you could imagine, decided to go on a couple of holidays in order to celebrate, and found myself smack bang in the middle of the Boxing Day Tsunami. It was the most horrific time of my life, but it was also the most enlightening, and it took my whole life on a new trajectory.
One of the things I recognize beyond the Tsunami experience, which, like you said, it's totally life-changing for sure. I mean, I haven't experienced it. I've heard you talk about it on the radio station and many other times. One thing that stood out for me was, given your background, you were winning awards galore. I was living in Birmingham at the time, and you're always in the magazines. Michelle Mills brought on your company. You'd won this award and that award. What were you doing? What was your business about back then? Is it still the same?
No, absolutely not. It's a completely different thing. So my last employed position was as head of client development for a branding agency. And I remember feeling a long way away from my family when there was illness, and I decided I wanted to move back home. And I thought, well, if I can do what I'm doing for this branding agency, for small to medium-sized agencies, which is all about new business generation, and do it in a very maverick way, in a way that I wanted to, then, maybe that could be successful and useful. So I thought that I was living my purpose. I thought that I was disrupting marketing and showing people that actually marketing doesn't have to be smoke and mirrors. You can pay somebody like me to book you a really high profile appointment, and all you do is pay me for the appointment. You don't pay me for the work I've put in, for the research, for anything. You just pay me very handsomely for the appointment. So I took all of the risk away, and that's why I was winning so many awards, because it was so incredibly disruptive. And I thought, this is it. I'm living my purpose. This is what I've been put on this planet to do.
What made you mention the word purpose a few times there?
Because I really did think that was what my destiny was. And it was only when I was caught in the tsunami that everything flipped upside down, and I was shown absolutely, with no shadow of a doubt, that I had taken the wrong path somewhere, and that this is not my path. Now, 20 years down the line, now I'm living my purpose on this planet. I'm doing exactly what I was designed to do on this planet. And if I hadn't have been involved in the Boxing Day Tsunami, I wouldn't have seen the lessons that I now carry forward.
How do you know when you're not on purpose, besides having, tsunami happen to you? Besides that little drama there, how do you know? How did you know, or how do other people know that their life's just they're not doing what they're designed to be doing?
I think when you are shown something and you suddenly realise that there's something else that you want to do, and it starts to take you away from what you're doing. So for me, it was the Hikkaduwa Village Fund. We started a charity, and all I wanted to do was spend all my time raising money for orphans and people in Sri Lanka that had looked after us. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to go to work anymore. I wasn't driven by that, but I had to, because I had 14 staff. So I had to keep my nose to the grindstone and carry on working. What that did, Haroon, is it took me down a massive path of destruction. And what I'm talking about when I say destruction is I'm talking about, it starts with stress, and then it starts to turn into illness. And then for me, it turned into a full medical breakdown, not a mental breakdown, but a medical breakdown where my whole body was going, no, you're on the wrong path. Will you listen?
And so your current path, you're, amongst other things, one of the things that you're doing is you're obviously speaking at schools. And we're going to come on to that, why you're speaking at schools. What about your non-school activities, extracurricular activities? What's your business now?
Okay, so my business, basically, can I start with the lessons, Haroon? Would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the key lessons that I learnt in the Tsunami, they took a long time to distill, to marinate, and for me to understand. And only with hindsight can you understand what it was all leading up to. So now I've got it all planned out. But don't get me wrong, the last 20 years has been higgledy-piggledy up and down. But the lessons that I learned in the Tsunami boil down to this. First of all, there is magnificence at the core of humanity, and you see that in the face of adversity. You see it when you see a person put their life on the line for a complete stranger, and it humbles you because you realise that we are made of something beautiful and astonishing. And I really do think that there is like a factory reset button, that, you know, as soon as you're in adversity, bang, Aruga, you go back to this benevolent, compassionate being. And I think that what affects us is all of the experiences that we have in life. They pile layers of mud on top of that beautiful, bright and compassionate, benevolent core, and you end up, you know, you can have mental illness, you can have physical illness, you can have experiences that shape your opinion. And I think they make us forget just how magnificent we are. So the first,
go ahead.
I was going to say the first lesson is that we have this magnificence at our core. The second lesson is that we're all driven by an unseen force. And what I mean by that is that we're all motivated by something that is very, very personal, and we don't show it to the rest of the world. We show our behaviour to the rest of the world, but we don't show our core driving forces, which is the true essence of who we are. And that is the thing that we need to stay in sync with in order to find fulfilment, happiness, mental wealth, and everything else. Sorry, I just said mental wealth, and that really, I need to mention Mike Pagan, because that's Mike Pagan's phrase. Mental wealth is much better than mental health, and that's my dear friend Mike Pagan, that you know very well as well. So that's his. Another lesson I learned was the fact that communication is really easy. You know, if people talk about the fact that they're not communicating, they're not understanding each other well, that's an excuse. Because when you see people communicating with ease, even though they all speak different languages, you're just like, yeah, this is easy. I know exactly what you mean. So it doesn't have to be hard. Those are obstacles that we put in the way. And then I think the final lesson, which is potentially the most important, is that collaboration is easy when you have a shared goal. That's all you need for human collaboration, is a shared goal or a shared enemy. And that just brings everyone in line. And when you collaborate effectively, you can literally move mountains. So my business is about going into organizations primarily and helping their leaders to unlock their people power by using the tools that I've created and by empowering them, not by beating them with a stick or, you know, any old-fashioned kind of, you know, old motivation techniques and, you know, and strict rules and all that. But actually it's about empowering people. It's about respecting and empowering, which is what I was always about as a CEO.
That's absolutely beautiful. Wow, you've just taken a whole lifetime of experience, knowledge and wisdom and percolated into a few sentences. So you do that with businesses. Now, I've in the recent few years, I've seen you speak for, amongst other people, Employability UK, which is a charity for young people. And what's interesting, because me watching someone speak is one thing, but then me observing audience is something else. And each time I've seen you speak to audience, which are primarily young people, from 14 to 18, they're just blown away, highly engaged, highly interactive, and it's absolutely beautiful to see. What is it that you do with young people to help them?
Well, if we talk about just one aspect, behaviour profiling, when you're an adult, you know, as soon as you go for an interview, you're behaviour profiled. As soon as you go for any potential job, any recruitment scenario, you're going to be profiled. When you enter an organisation, you're going to be profiled, and people are going to measure you by the results that you give. And they're going to give you the roles and the responsibilities that they think fit with your kind of natural energies. But this is it's an unspoken language. It's a language that really great communicators understand naturally. And it's a language that people use in business, in every walk of life, but we never teach our children. And if I look back to my own childhood, some of the most painful times in my childhood were when I fell out with my friends, or I didn't understand how to navigate my relationships, or something went wrong and I didn't know how to handle it emotionally. I didn't have the tools. And so what I realised is that if we can show young adults the basis of behaviour profiling, we're not only giving them a tool that the rest of the world speaks, a different language that they speak that they're not sharing with anyone, but actually we're giving them tools that can help with their mental health, that can help with their relationships, that can help them build rapport. It literally gives them a massive advantage. And so I have a passion to say, why are we keeping behaviour profiling away from young adults? These are exactly the skills they need that are going to help them to stay fulfilled, mentally healthy, and create those relationships that are successful. So let's show young adults how to navigate those relationships effectively.
Mental health, mental well-being is high up on the agenda on many schools, the entire education system, and particularly post-lockdown, there seems to be a big issue, even in the poshest schools, the ones who young kids are from well-to-do backgrounds. How does understanding your behavioral profile affect one's mental health?
Okay, so I think it's not necessarily recognizing your own profile as much as understanding, because so what I do is I don't give young adults a profile, because let's face it, we're developing outside of the womb from 0 to 7 years old. Then we have another period, 7 to about 20, where we're still developing. So if you are, and especially I used to say 18, but after the pandemic, it's definitely 20 odd. And it's only then that you are really fully developed. So I don't do profiling on young adults younger than 17, 18, because they're not self-aware enough, they haven't settled, they don't know, they haven't completely developed. So what I do instead is I show them the spectrum. If this is your behaviour, this is how you're going to be perceived by others. And these are the kind of conflicts that might naturally happen, and these are the things that you can do to change them. And when you feel a certain way about someone else, that's because of their behaviour. So I'm giving them the tools to be able to reconcile the difference between one behaviour type and another, and just make those tweaks in their communication and the way they come across in order to make it a smoother process altogether. In essence, though, I think that if we can do this, then we have a chance to be able to reduce the number of horrendous cases of suicide, of self-harm, of depression, of stress. This can make a massive difference, Haroon, massive, because we don't care about the things. You think that kids care about, things that they don't. The things that are most important to young adults and to children are relationships. I watched a brilliant clip on on YouTube yesterday, and it was a clip where they were asking all the adults, if you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be? And they're all going, oh, Brad Pitt, or Nelson Mandela. And then they asked their children, and all of their children said mum and dad and the family.
Oh,
And I was just like, oh my God, and these parents were in tears because they were overthinking it. And we tend to overthink for our young adults, the thing that they want more than anything, most of the time, is those relationships to work.
the interesting thing you mentioned is about them referring to their mum and dad. And I do a particular exercise at schools, and I ask young people, who are the people who inspire you the most? And like you, I think it's these big names or these historical figures. And mum and dad keeps on coming up again and again, and sometimes older brother or older sister. So thank you for sharing that. This is so important. This is, although we're being very conversational about this, the topic is absolutely mind-blowingly deep, and yet you make it simple for young people to understand, which is critical. If a young person is coming from a background, or they're exposed to social media or some kind of media which makes them very intolerant, and we have a very intolerant world at this moment in time. We've got a lot of stuff going on which we won't go into. How does understanding what you teach, how does it help them to develop tolerance, or if at all?
So one of my tools is called Essence, and it's the analysis that helps people to understand their core driving forces. And you're right, I'm a simple girl. I'm not academic. I'm massively ADHD, was only diagnosed 2 years ago. So I didn't do well at school. I did well at school. I didn't do well in my exams. There's the difference. So I was the age of O levels, and although I was entered for 9 O levels, I only passed 2, and those were the only 2 that didn't need recall. English language, I got an A, and in my maths, I got a U, which is ungraded. And it bugs me to this day, Haroon, because I look back and I think, if I was a teacher, I think, hold on a minute, you can't be 2 ends of the spectrum, in terms of intelligence. So how are we measuring, and why is there such a disparity? But back then I just felt like a failure. I joined the Air Force at 17, where I continued to feel a failure, where it was, where exams were concerned and academia was concerned. So I'm not academic. So I do love to dumb things down. And Essence is key in terms of me dumbing things down, because Essence is possibly the most valuable tool that I've ever created. And sometimes I look at it and I think, I was channeled, because what Essence does is absolutely unbelievable. It shows you so much about what gives you fulfillment and happiness in life. It shows you everything that is going to fill your buckets and everything that's going to poke holes in your buckets. And yet it's written in such a simplistic manner that it is easy for anyone to understand. And when I'm not doing the profiles, I share with people the theory of Essence. The theory of Essence shows us that our core driving forces, the things that motivate us, the things we believe in, all are wrapped around our fundamental years. So our experience from the age of 0 to 7, all the things that we experienced, our culture, our religion, if we have one, our caregivers, the lessons and the experiences we had, they shape our DNA basically, and it's very hard to change that in later life. So if you understand just the fact that somebody that sees something completely a different way from you, if you realise that it's just because their fundamental years were different, and that they had different caregivers, different culture, different background, then actually the greatest politicians in this world could learn something. It's just a difference of perception. That's all. If you give that tool to people, if you show people that theory, it just breaks everything down on an even keel. And there's no competition anymore. It's just, okay, that's your perception. I understand it. I appreciate it. This is mine. Where can we meet in the middle? So it's such a forgiving tool. It helps you to understand and forgive each other, and just accept each other for our differences.
For the longest time, I've been saying that the education system is established on Darwinian principles of survival of the fittest. And survival of the fittest means that if there's 10 of you, then one of you is going to survive, and 9 of you, well, you're going to struggle. You're not worthy. But that's based on old Victorian era mindset. So there's a whole history on that. So I'm loving what you're doing. And I swear to you, this needs to get out. This whole concept, what you're talking about, needs to percolate through every single school, the whole education system. Had you known that when you were a teenager or maybe a preteen, how would that have potentially affected your trajectory?
Do you know what, Haroon? You and I were both in sales in a previous life. And we were in sales because we're empathetic and we have passion for other people. And we understand that actually sales is about making sure that everyone is happy. And I think that's why we both come from a sales background. And I tried so hard to work for a charity. I kept thinking, I'm really good at sales, but I want to be doing something that fulfills me. So I applied to so many charities, and they all turned me down. As a young adult, they all turned me down. And to this day, I don't understand why, because I think that if I'd have seen what truly drives me, which for me, it's my aesthetic core driver and my social core driver. So it's about serving humanity, but it's also about having awe and wonder and self-actualization and beauty in the world and appreciating that. I think that I would have I would have been working in a charity and doing some good for humanity. So I think I still would have found a way, but actually I would never change anything, because if it hadn't been for me being in the aftermath of the tsunami, being caught in the tsunami, I don't think those lessons would have come to me. And something, it doesn't matter what you believe in, whether you think it's cathartic, whether you think it's science, whether you think it's luck, whether you think it's angels, I don't care. Whatever happened then had such a profound impact on me that it made me hyper-focused and create the tools, because all I wanted the rest of humanity that was still on the flipping hamster wheel to realize, oh my gosh, if the worst thing happens, do you know what? We're going to be okay. We are going to be okay, because we will come together. And this beauty that I saw in the aftermath of the tsunami of collaboration and love and compassion and benevolence, I need to tell everyone that is going to work 9 to 5 and doing jobs they don't like doing, that there is more to them. So unleashing their magnificence is the most important thing for me.
I get to talk to a lot of teachers. I've got quite a number of my family members and extended family members in the teaching profession in the UK, actually. One of the things I hear from, across the board is the level of stress. And I have to say sometimes toxicity between teaching staff. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that. How can teachers from top down, how can they reduce the amount of stress, anxiety, and friction between themselves so they can collaborate more?
That's exactly what I do. It's what I do with organisations. It's what I do with groups of leaders, and I can do it with groups of teachers, even groups of parents. Because once you start to understand a little bit about human communication and human behaviour profiling, and the differences that we have with each other, it just makes it so much easier to be able to get on. So what I will do with a group of, say, teachers is I would do their individual profiles, but then I'd show a group report to show where every single person shines brightest. And it's not about making anyone feel like they're not their best. My tools help everyone to shine, and they celebrate every single area where people shine. So we go through prominent qualities and show where everyone's energy is best, where they shine. And the beauty about my profile is the fact that we've got a opposite. For every high result, you've got an opposite low one. So for me, my self-confidence will be through the roof. Well, it has to be, because, I designed my tools, and if I'm not confident about them, then no one's going to believe me. So I've got to be self-confident. The opposite of that is the fact that my accuracy is shockingly bad. So if I send you an email, which is littered with typos, please don't think less of me. Understand that what that's giving you is a clue that my talents lie elsewhere. And this is a key thing for me. And I look back to my own childhood, Haroon, and I'm a very self-confident and determined character. I always was. And I look back and I wonder, why did teachers always scold me? Why did they always reject me? Why did they always have me standing against the wall, when it wasn't my fault? Why was it always me that they disliked? And for a long time, I thought it was me. For the longest time, I thought it was me. I thought there was something wrong with me. As an adult, I realised that the majority of teachers are the opposite behaviour type. They are inclusive, they're caring, they're nurturing, and they see these strong characters as being bullies. So you see the opposite in other people. And if you don't understand that, then actually you can really damage. It can be really damaging. Yeah. So if I'd have had teachers that understood about behaviour profiling in me, maybe they would have encouraged me rather than scolding me. Maybe they would have not had me in detention all the time or standing against the wall at playtime all the time. Maybe they'd have given me outlets where I could shine without having to find it on my own. And if I can empower teachers to understand that, everyone has got an area where they really truly shine, and our job is to help facilitate to get that person to shine brighter. I know that they'd love it. Teachers are in teaching because of that reason, so I know they'd love it.
What you pointed out there is quite interesting, that if you're the recipient of this perception, which is, perceiving something that's actually not true, then the receiver will feel bullied, or they'll sense harassment or jealousy or envy, a whole host of stuff. In both cases, they're both wrong. It's just poor understanding of each other. Wow. Absolutely.
It is. I have to go back, Haroon, and just add to that, because if I would love to be my headmistress that spanked me on a almost daily basis for things that actually weren't my fault. I would love to go back to her and say, do you realise that this child is 10.5 months younger than her sibling? She had to fight for, not fight for survival, but had to fight for attention, had to fight to be seen. She was put in the same, in fact, all of her friends were put in a higher year at school. So all of a sudden she was separated from the only people she had a relationship with. And then when she started school, you decided to put her 2 years forward. So again, you parted her from all of her friends. Of course she was the odd one out. Of course she was the one that could only play if she was it in TIG, because nobody knew her and they didn't accept her. And this is the person that had, a Burmese father, the first dark child on the council estate. Do you have any idea what this child is navigating? And why scold them for being, spirited? Why not understand what they're going through instead?
I've seen many times young people who have been taken outside the classroom, say just before a talk starts or just into the talk. And within the first little piece of conversation I have, I just ask some, deep questions, but it looks very harmless, simple questions. And I think to myself, oh my God, this kid is such a genius. But because of the perception of the teacher and because of their behavioural, it's never a one-way street. It's always a two-way street. They get taken out. I'm thinking, this is the person who needs to be in this class. This will actually help their behaviour. But hey ho. So
yeah, last week I was speaking at a school in Coventry, and I think it was possibly one of the most difficult talks that I've had, because you had this building that was condemned. It was condemned in 2010, and they piled 180 year 10s into this room. They were all sitting on plastic chairs. They couldn't see the screen. It was a small TV screen at the front of the room. There were pillars in front of everyone's view. There were buckets catching water that trickled down from the ceiling. It was not an empowering environment for those kids. And I say kids, those young adults. And it was the most feral talk that I've ever done in my life. And there was one instigator, very, very tall young man, who was an instigator of all of the disruption, and it all stemmed from him. And the teacher came to me afterwards. She was saying, I'm so sorry about him. I'm so sorry about him. And I said, yeah, but what you don't realise is he is a leader. He has got some serious talent. And she said, she walked me out to reception. When we got to reception, she said to me, Miss, do you think you could just repeat to me what you said about that lad in that talk then? And I turned around, and this 6 foot tall year 10 was standing there. And I said, yes. So I turned around to him and I said to him, you don't realise how much talent you have. If you can channel all of that talent, all of those qualities that you have, you could be magnificent. And if you don't, I don't know where that's going to lead, but it's polar and it's your choice. And he was just gobsmacked for about 2 seconds and said, thank you. Then he went back to being feral.
Default mechanism. And the thing is, though, that young man probably has never heard anybody say that to him. And because of the behavior that he's displaying, obviously he's going to be, had to go out by teachers, parents, left, right, and center. I really hope for people like that, because I've been in those kind of shoes where they get the opportunity to actually be themselves, instead of operating from this element of fear and shame and or whatever it is that's bothering him. Let's look at 2 different groups. One is the teachers, and then one is a student. What 3 things, I'm not asking for what 3 things can teachers do, given what you teach, what you share, what you train people in? What can they do to improve stress, anxiety, performance, whatever it is that they need to do for themselves?
So for themselves, it's understanding who they are, where their strengths are, and why they feel a certain way towards others. Because we always feel drawn to people that are like us, and very often we feel repelled by people who are not like us. It's a very tribal thing, a very primal thing. But actually, what we need in order to be effective is we need that complete team. So we need to understand, rather than fighting a person that we don't agree with, it's actually about finding where can we meet in the middle, where can we bring what I bring to the party and what you bring to the party, how can we make it a picnic? It's understanding those differences. If you understand where you shine, then you can understand what it is that you bring to the party. If you can also understand what it is that truly drives you and what you need for fulfillment, then it's easy. So I'll give you an example of that. I know that aesthetic is my highest core driving force, and aesthetic is all about finding awe and wonder and beauty in things. It's about self-actualization and being the very best that you can. Now, the other day, I had an instance where basically something happened and a very important meeting could not go ahead. And it couldn't go ahead because a BT man turned up at this very important client's house where he's working from home and said, I've got to turn off the broadband. And I knew it had taken me 3 months to wait for that really important meeting. It was going to take another 3 months in order for me to get it back in the diary. So I felt it was completely unfair. I felt that it was nobody's fault, but it was just so unfair. And if you look at all the triggers in the Essence report, it shows you that if something feels unfair, then it's likely to be your aesthetic core driver that's being triggered. So I knew that bucket was the one that was leaking. And what I had to do, regardless of the situation, is I had to fill up my aesthetic bucket. So what did I do? Well, it's pointless carrying on working because I'm just going to get more and more frustrated. So what I did instead is I got in my car, I chased the sunset, and I took a load of photographs, and I came back feeling on fire because I'd literally topped up my aesthetic bucket. So it's got nothing to do with the actual problem itself. It's understanding which bucket is affected and therefore how to top it up.
This explains why I see so many photographs and so many paintings. I mean, do you want to explain some of your paintings behind you? Because it is relevant to our conversation.
Yeah, this is topping up my bucket. So over Christmas, I had the most horrendous it was an infection, and like a throat infection, ear infection, and my eardrum burst quite spectacularly at 6 a.m. on Christmas morning. So Christmas did not happen. So what I did is I got one of the presents that I got from someone else was an acrylic paint pouring set. I'd always fancied it. And I topped up my bucket. So everything about Christmas, was unfair. I couldn't see my family. I couldn't see my sister. I couldn't see my mum and dad. I couldn't give them the gifts that I'd spent. I couldn't enjoy anything. I had a half a frozen pizza on Christmas Day for my Christmas lunch.
We had some good dinner. We could have brought some over.
I had vertigo and everything, so I couldn't even go out. So what I did is I just immersed myself in a new hobby, and now the whole house is covered in canvases of acrylic paint pouring, which people are buying already. They're like, Michelle, please, can I have one of those? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Wow. But yeah, it's driving my husband insane. This is a hyper focus of ADHD, and I'm going to make a connection here, Haroon. When I was at school, I was in all the clubs after school, and there are things that teachers used to say to me, Michelle, you can't be in all the clubs after school. Why not? Just focus on one or two. Why? I want to do lots. Actually, you look now, at 55 years old, 53 years old, I was diagnosed with ADHD. Okay? Why are you stifling a child that has, superpowers? Because being able to spin lots of plates is a superpower. Why would you stifle that child? Why would you dull their sparkle?
Wow. I'm like falling back, because that's the issue I have with most people who think they know me. They say, oh, just do one thing. And I'm like, I can't. My brain just goes numb if I do one thing.
Me too. I can only do. Sorry, we're just so excitable, aren't we? With this.
Yeah. Oh my goodness! And everyone means well, but I'll just say it out loud. I sometimes think people think I should dumb myself down to the. I'm not saying they're dumb, but kind of sometimes think they're dumb. It's like, why don't you just let me be who I am? Why does anyone try to get me to put me in one corner and say, do this? I can't.
Do you know, Haroon, I had a conversation with my mum on the phone last night, and she's 78 now. I think she's 78, 77, 78. Sorry, Mum. But basically, when I was diagnosed with ADHD, what I understood was actually it's very unlikely that your parents don't have some form of neurodiversity. And I looked at my mum and I'm like, oh, my mum's got it. My mum is ADHD. That's where I got it from. And for ages, because of her behaviour profile, which is the exact opposite of mine, she was rejecting it. She was even rejecting it when I had my diagnosis. And the psychiatrist said that. He said everyone else has given a different reading of who you were as a child, and she's the only one saying, no, there's nothing wrong with her. But that's because she has it as well. But the funny thing is, I forgot where I was going with that, Haroon. Where was I going?
Yeah, we're talking about people trying to pigeonhole you when you've got ADHD, and where we can actually, it's not multitasking. Multitasking is trying to do everything at the same time. It's like doing different projects at the same time and doing it well.
Yeah, no, you're right. And what I remembered what it is, my mum said to me, I was having a chat, and she said, oh, you're busy, aren't you? And I said, yes. And she said, did I just see that you've joined another board of directors? I'm like, yes, Mum. And she said, what's that? So I'm on the Shine Together, CIC. I'm on the board there as a board director. I'm on the board of the PSA as a membership director, and now national president-elect. I'm an ambassador for Employability UK and for lots of other charities and lots of other things, as well as running 2 businesses. And a lot of people are like, you'd be so much more effective if you focused. And I'm like, you don't know me. If I've got one thing to focus on, I'm just going to go down lots of rabbit holes. I need those things to be able to swap, because it keeps me energized.
First person to think like that and talk like that I know of, at least amongst my friends and peers. Seriously, it has been an incredibly lonely journey. This is for me as an adult now, that nobody else gets it. But then the flip side is sometimes I don't get why other people can't do more than one thing. But, that's a different point of view altogether. So let's go back to what we were saying, which is, what are 3 things that teachers can do now to self-improve? 3 things. One is get to know yourself. Give me the second one.
Get to know others and the differences between. So when someone has a different behavior profile to you, they're going to see the world from a different perspective. So understand how they perceive you, because if you don't understand how you come across, then you can't build rapport. So because of my behavior profile, quite a few people that are the opposite to me will find me very intimidating. Now, those that know me or who are like me will go, Michelle, intimidating? You're joking. She's a big cuddly teddy bear and she's Auntie Shell and she's caring and nurturing. But you have to understand that if people find you intimidating, they're allowed to. And what you have to do is, when you're communicating with them and when you're in the vicinity of them, you have to change your behavior in order to build rapport. So it's not changing who you are, it's changing the way that you deliver. So if I'm delivering to a group of people that are the opposite behavior profile to me, I have to change everything from what I wear, to the way that I deliver, to the way I talk, to my volume, to my speed. And a lot of people might think that's manipulative. No, it's about building rapport. If I want my message to come across, I don't want you sitting there thinking, oh my life, what is she wearing? That's putting me right off, because my normal garish outfits would be a little bit like that. So all I'm doing is allowing that communication to be more effective by understanding how other people perceive me.
I live in the countryside, and say there's a lot of farmers, and let's say you're meeting with lots of farmers, on their farm. You do not turn up to a farm in a 3-piece suit. You will totally be disconnected, and you're gonna have a challenge building rapport. So it's really about talking the language, but not through the same language as the person you're building rapport with. Just not in the form of words necessarily. What's the third thing that teachers can do to self-improve their life?
Practice. So, so understand yourself, understand others, and then practice. If you don't implement, if you don't understand how to change your behavior on a regular basis, it won't stick. So you and I both know it takes, on average 28 days, some people say more, some people say less, to create a new neural pathway. It takes about 4 years of working life in order to change a behavior profile to the extent that it becomes subconscious. So you do it subconsciously. That's a lot of work. So it's a question of actually looking at your report every single day for 28 days, or looking at the theory every day for 28 days, to get the neural pathway to start to think differently, and then to practice it and keep practicing it until you get to the stage where you don't have to think about it.
On your LinkedIn profile, there's something that you say, you call yourself the People Reader. What does that mean?
So the People Reader does not mean I'm a witch. It doesn't mean that I've got a crystal ball, and it doesn't mean that I'm psychic. My tools are called the People Reader, and what they do is they allow people to read each other. And it's just something that stuck, and people just call me. And do you know what? I remember West Bromwich Albion Football Club, one of my favourite clients. I worked with their across the board. I worked with leaders across the board there, and they used to say, when I used to turn up, I could hear them go, "Oh, careful, Mystic Meg's here." So, so for that reason, when people know that I can read them, it kind of stuck, and the People Reader just stuck. Bear in mind that what we're looking at when I'm doing my work, we're looking at 3 things. We're looking at non-visual communication, we're looking at non-verbal communication, and we're looking at behavior profiling. And it's only when you put all 3 together that you can be a people reader.
So we're not going to finish as yet, but what I want people to be aware of is, for teachers, or actually business people as well, who want to get hold of you, what's the best place for them to find you online?
There's only one Michelle Mills Porter on the planet.
Right.
So it's really easy. It's really easy. The only advice is, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. If you look at Michelle Mills Porter, there'll be lots of unattractive old photos of me, I'm sure. But LinkedIn is by far the best way to get hold of me. It's really not hard.
you mentioned, obviously, the whole purpose of this is about helping changing behavior, changing situation, relationships, and so on for teachers, for students. Can people get hold of your test online, or is it something that they do with you? How does it work?
Yeah, you complete it online, but you must have a certified practitioner walk through with you. And the reason I say that is because although Essence is very simplistic in its output, you can actually do that online without any particular consultancy. But the actual behaviour profile is a 27-page report, and
Wow.
you have to understand how to interpret it, and you have to be in the hands of a certified practitioner that can be able to walk you through it and show you how to implement it. So for that reason, yeah, if people want to do the behaviour profile, then that's something that you need a practitioner for. But the best environment to do this in is to do it in a day's workshop. Because if you have a group of people in a day's workshop, I can do your profiles before the event. And during the event, we can not only have our own profiles, but we can look at the group as a whole. And what happens after just a one-day workshop is teams come together, in a way that they've never come together before. They understand each other. And one of the things that I'm most proud of, Haroon, is not only are people saying, do you know what, we actually communicate a lot better. People actually say it's just a happier place to be. It's a happier place to work.
A good sign, by the way, that your place isn't happy to work at, I'm talking about schools at this moment, where it can apply to businesses, is number one, absenteeism. People fall sick, they get ill. Number two, a big red flag, high staff turnover. So the cost of staff turnover is immense. I used to be in recruitment for a while, years ago, and it is very, very expensive to hire staff, train them up, and everything that gets involved in that. So high staff turnover is not a good look. So I will put on the show notes your details how to get a hold of you. Let's now move to the topic of, be it parents or teachers, what are 3 things they can do directly now? So with that, before they do the test, and they want 3 things they can do to improve the situation for the young people like you and I, when we were at school. How can they make life better for their students?
I think to understand young adults, to understand that everyone shines. So to understand that if somebody is doing something that you don't approve of or you don't agree with, then understand what their opposite talent might be, because everyone's got something to bring to the party. Number 2 is don't dull their sparkle. With every neurodiversity, we're seeing more and more neurodiversity now, and I think there's going to be a tipping point at some point when they realise there is nothing neuronormal ever. We are all neurodiverse. We're just different areas of neurodiverse, and neurodiversity is a massive thing. Every neurodiversity has got areas where they shine. They have got superpowers, whether it's hyperfocus, whether it's plate spinning, whether it's creatively solving problems, whether it's thinking outside the box. It's there's a beauty in neurodiversity that we're not looking at, and if we can hold it up as a strength rather than something to be ashamed of or a disability that you talk down about, then maybe we can change society on the whole. And so I think the third thing would be to just ensure that everyone has the room to be who they want to be. So, just if they want to be on their own and that's the environment they prefer, don't try and force them into mixing with others. Understand that maybe that is an area that they're more comfortable in, and give them the room to achieve that. And if somebody wants to be with others and doesn't want to spend time on their own in a quiet room, all the rest of it, then understand that that's what helps them. So just create an environment where they can do that. So rather than trying to put people into boxes, just allow them to be who they are.
Beautiful.
They're all kind of similar, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. And I can see the trajectory of this, which is you are going to have more empathy, more compassion, more, the big word, collaboration, of course. There's a lot of hope. Now, let's Michelle, this has been absolutely awesome. I so believe in everything that you're doing. And now that I've learned so much more about you, I really have. I feel every single school needs to get you in, or you'll need a team. You can't do every single school. There's about 4,000. That's just secondary schools. They need you in because teachers are doing some amazing work, but the lives are being destroyed because of lack of understanding. So is there any final message you wish to share with our listeners, our viewers?
3 steps. We've done a lot of 3 steps, haven't we, Haroon? So why not finish on 3 steps? 3 steps for everyone to make their life a little bit better. And that is, first of all, to recognise. So you have to recognise, and if we're talking about trauma, you don't have to go through a tsunami, that you can't measure one person's trauma or adversity against someone else's. So the brain doesn't work like that. And what I talk about a lot is actually we've all been through the pandemic. That's something that we can all relate to. So that's trauma, that's adversity. That's a trigger. So recognise what it is that is different about you and what you can bring to the party. Recognise it first. Once you've recognised your difference, then accept it. And you have to do this in stages. So the second thing is to accept it. Accept your difference. Just enjoy who you are. Accept that you're different to other people and accept that they're different to you. And the third phase, which can only be done after you've accepted it for a little while, is to celebrate it. If you celebrate your difference, you celebrate what you bring to the party, how you can collaborate together, how you can fit together, then that is the key to human collaboration. And it's the key to happiness. It's the key to everything, in my opinion, Haroon. So those 3 steps: recognise, accept, celebrate.
Absolutely brilliant way to finish this interview, this conversation. Thank you ever so much, Michelle Mills-Porter, for joining the Schools Motivational Speaker podcast. If you're listening, watching to this podcast now, thank you for all this way through. Thank you for listening, and make sure you comment and get in touch with Michelle. You've been listening to 2 Schools Motivational Speakers.